Hello, in this tutorial I will show you how to paint this beach van. This painting was done on an 11-inch by 14-inch canvas panel, so I'm using one of those canvases that doesn't have the sides. I'm going to use my traceable, and this traceable can be found on the website. I'm going to start with the following materials. I'm going to start with a 3/4 inch flat brush and the two colors, Cerulean Blue and Titanium White. There are other colors and brushes, and you can look those up on the tutorial itself. Okay, and I'm going to start with my T-square ruler because I'm going to draw my horizon line. And this horizon line is approximately in the middle of the canvas. So I have my canvas going horizontally in landscape mode. And I am going to estimate where the middle is, and I'm going to draw a horizontal line. So the T-square ruler is convenient because you can use it to line it up and make a perfectly perpendicular line. Okay, so now with my 3/4 inch flat brush, I'm going to dip it in the water and kind of pat it dry. And I'm going to dip it in the titanium white. So we're going to paint the sky. I'm going to start at the top of the canvas and I'm going to work my way down. And this entire top area above the horizon line is sky. So I applied the white first, and then I'm going to apply the cerulean blue. So you'll get the white to mix with the cerulean blue after you apply the white first. You're going to do horizontal strokes, and you're going to let those colors kind of blend together. So we're doing this sort of ombre effect where the sky is darkest at the top and it gets lighter as it goes towards the bottom. Okay, so at this point I am not adding any more cerulean blue to my brush. I am reloading it in white, and I am going down the canvas, and my color is getting lighter and lighter as I work my way down. And so I'm blending it back up to let that lighter color blend back into that blue. So if you find that it's becoming too white, you can always dip your corner of the brush in a little bit more cerulean blue to keep that blue going. But essentially, we just want it to get lighter as it goes towards the horizon line. Okay, and it doesn't have to be a perfect blend of the color where the color's exactly perfectly dark and then it blends perfectly to white, because it is a sky and there could be clouds, stray high clouds here and there, and little spots of darker blue in some areas. So it does not have to be perfect. Okay. So, working your way to the horizon line, try not to paint under the horizon line, but if you do, then that's fine. We just don't want to lose where that line is. And of course, as with all my videos, they speed up a little bit during parts that take quite a bit of time, and feel free to pause the video as you work. Definitely do not paint as fast as I am painting, because I am not really painting that fast in real life. This is a speed up version of what I am doing. Okay, so that's it for the sky, and we're going to work our way down under the horizon line and do the ocean. I have cobalt teal hue. This is the Deco Art Americana Premium. I like to use that particular color in that brand because it doesn't come, Basics doesn't make that color, and it's easier to not mix it. So I love that color. I use it a lot. Okay, so what I'm doing with the ruler is I am going to make a horizontal line about halfway in that area right there. Actually, it's a little bit uneven. It's not exactly halfway. So the top part of the ocean, it's a little more than halfway. I'd say about 3 inches. Just kind of estimate that. So I'm going to do the start with the teal, and I'm going to do the same kind of thing that I did with the sky, only I did not apply white first here. I did the solid teal color first here. Okay, so I'm still using the 3/4 flat. I rinsed it off, and so I just have the teal on my brush right now. And I'm using the tip of my brush to kind of cut in right there to get that line to be relatively horizontal, as best as you can. And then I'm going to kind of work my way down a couple inches here. And eventually I'm going to add white to my brush and do the same thing with the water that I did with the sky. So it's going to be the ombre sort of thing where it starts out dark and it gets lighter as it goes to the bottom. So I'm going to add the white in my brush. And this particular color, the white, for some reason lightens it up fast. So just be kind of careful with that white. Too much white will make your color turn to a very light turquoise color. So that's kind of what's happening. So, and I'm going to work my way down to that line that I drew, and that line, that area is going to be lightest on the bottom. And then again, it doesn't have to be a perfect fade of the color. It is the ocean, so there are lots of areas where there might be some more white because we have the waves and different color tones that we see in the water. Then the video is going to speed up just a little bit here. But all I'm doing is making sure that I just have more white on my brush as I approach the bottom and try to get that bottom to be as straight as possible with that line. You can paint over that line slightly if you'd like, but don't lose where that line is. So if you prefer, you can actually use painter's tape for this. I did a different version of this painting with painter's tape and found that the painter's tape was not as enjoyable to use because you have to wait for it to dry completely, and peeling off the painter's tape is always kind of stressful. So I liked using the ruler and just drawing the lines. So what I'm doing with the space that I have left, I'm basically dividing it in half. So this is the final horizontal line that I did with the T-square ruler, just cut in half right there. So the top half is going to be unbleached titanium, that's that sand color, and the bottom half is going to be neutral gray value 5, which is gray. Fancy word for gray. So this area is the unbleached titanium. This is a very opaque color. It spreads very nicely. You don't need very many coats because it's very opaque. So that's kind of nice. Just try to get your line to be as straight as possible. And then we have our neutral gray value 5 on the bottom. So that whole area is painted gray. The gray is a little bit translucent, so you might need another coat on top of that gray. So you'll just fill that bottom part in. So we have the gray is representing the street that our van is on, and the unbleached titanium is of course the sand, and then we have the water, and then we have the sky. Okay, so you want your painting to dry. Thanks to video editing, mine is dry now, and I am going to use my traceable. So take a break, let your painting dry, use a hair dryer to speed up the process and let it dry. But now if your painting is dry, you can get the traceable ready and get a sheet of graphite paper. So I have the graphite paper is underneath this traceable, shiny side down, and I'm using, this is just a regular drawing pencil, and I'm drawing the van. So as I'm tracing it here, the drawing will go to the canvas. So there it is, it shows up. And this is just easy peasy from here because all I need to do is paint it in. I don't need to worry about drawing or anything like that. It's kind of like we're painting a coloring book in. Only exception is that because we have a background already, we need to do something called whiting it out. So that just means that the area that we're going to paint, the Jeep, I'm just going to apply a kind of a thin layer of white over the entire area that I had traced for that Jeep. So I'm going to start at the top and paint the surfboard white. And it doesn't even have to be solid opaque with many layers of white, just kind of a thin layer. It could even be translucent, just enough to get, so when we paint the color on top, it's going to be nice and vibrant and opaque, and we're not going to see the ocean and everything be underneath it because the paint is kind of translucent. Some of the colors are. So that's what I'm doing here. And then this is the number 12 flat brush. So it's smaller than that 3/4 inch flat brush. And I can get into some smaller areas. I can turn my brush on the side and get in between those windows there. I am leaving those windows blank. Like that blue is showing through the windows because the windows are clear. And so we would see the ocean through those windows. Later on, we'll do a little bit of dry brush on the windows to make it look like they're kind of glass. But for now, I'm leaving them blank. And then as I'm painting in, the direction of my strokes kind of go in the direction of the shape. So you saw with the fenders above the tires, it kind of curves. And the body, I'm just going left and right strokes. And so you just gonna kind of make the direction go in the shape that you're filling it in. Okay, so you can see it's not like a perfect solid coat of white. It's just enough to give it a nice base so that when I go to my pink, I'm going to start with the pink, the medium magenta, and so that it shows up. Now, I did not wait for the white to dry 100%. And kind of both because I was impatient at the time and also I was kind of feeling experimental and wanted to try this out and see how it would look if that white blended with that pink just a bit to give it some color variation that looked kind of interesting. So that was my thought process at the time. So it's up to you if you want to not be experimental and let the white blend, or if you like the look, you can let it not dry all the way. But basically, I'm just painting the bottom half of the Jeep with the pink, and again, the direction of my strokes go kind of contoured with the shape. And then with the flat brush, the nice thing is that you can cut in on the sharper, the straight line areas, and you can use the full width of the brush or the thick areas. It's always easy to use these flat brushes. Okay, so for the tires, I'm going to switch to a round brush, and this is the number 4 round brush, and I'm going to use the color Mars Black, and I'm going to paint the circle. Painting circles, for me, I get kind of challenged with painting circles, believe it or not, so don't get frustrated if you're also challenged with painting circles. It kind of went outside the lines. I think the problem was when I traced it, I kind of made my circle kind of lumpy. So that's what happened here. But if you have the pouncers, the sponge pouncers, that can be used for this step. So I think I found the biggest one that set, I'm talking about the Martha Stewart round pouncers that I use. The biggest one is actually the same size of these tires. So you can use that if you're going for that perfect circle look. So I'm just painting that in solid black. And then you could also use the flat brush too for this step if you don't feel that comfortable with the round brush. Okay, so I'm going to do there's a front bumper and there's a back bumper. So I'm doing that gray with a little bit of white in there. So I applied the gray to my brush, but I also dipped it in just a little bit of white so that gray would be lighter and not exactly the same color as the street. And then I'm just going to go in and so this top part is supposed to be white, and instead of leaving it that kind of translucent whiteout thing that I did, I'm going to add a second coat of white to the top here, and I'm just using my round brush because it's a small area in between those windows. So that top part is white. And then of course you can customize this. You do not have to do the same colors that I'm doing. There's a lot of different possibilities, and with this van you can personalize it. You don't have to do the flowers on it. I ended up painting little orange flowers on the van. You can paint little palm trees. You can be super creative with it. So I'm doing the surfboard right now with primary yellow. And then at the end, I ended up adding a little bit of orange to the surfboard as well. But for now, it is primary yellow. And the part, I do not know the technical name for this part of the surfboard. But this part right here, the part that looks like the little shark fin, I am painting gray. Okay, so next, I am going to rinse off my brush and do the little black, the parts where that on top of the van where the surfboard that's holding the surfboard on the van. So just the two black lines. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my flat, and I'm going to do the dry brush thing I was talking about earlier with the windows. So we have the see-through windows. So I'm just going to do some streaks of dry brush white. And you notice what I'm doing. I dipped it in the white, and I'm wiping my brush on the paper towel. So when you do that, you create the dry brush effect. So you dip it in the white, wipe it on the paper towel, and you have dry strokes. And that I'm going vertical with my strokes. You can try going diagonal too with them, one way or the other. But I did vertical for some reason here, and that makes it look like glass. Okay, so next, moving right along, painting the van here. I'm going to do the two little dots on the tire, and I'm using the back of my paintbrush for that. So I just grabbed, this is the 3/4 flat, but I'm using the back part, the handle, to make those dots. And I actually just kind of made them a little bigger because I didn't like them that small. So I kind of used the round brush and my finger to kind of make the circles kind of bigger. So that's what I did there. And then now I have the 10-0 round. So I'm doing flowers on the van. But if I were to just paint orange flowers here, the orange would be way too translucent to show up against that pink. So I'm whiting out the area first. So I'm doing very, very simple flower. So just the petals with the tiny brush, the 10-0 liner brush with the titanium white. And then again, you can customize your designs if you're simplifying this and you don't have to do a design. It's up to you. Okay, so I am going to go silent here for just a bit, and this is all I'm doing here with the flowers. Okay, I'm going to move right along and do the palm trees. So I'm going to use the color Raw Umber, and unbleached titanium and my number 12 flat brush. So get that brush all rinsed off and pretty dry. And I'm going to actually double load it. So I'm going to dip it in the raw umber and I'm going to grab just a little bit of unbleached titanium. That unbleached titanium will get that color to be a little more opaque because raw umber is pretty see-through. So just adding that bit of the unbleached titanium will get it to be more solid. And so the palm tree trunk, I'm using the full width of the brush to kind of start out thick, but I'm going to quickly turn my brush, so twist it, and then it gets thinner as I go up. And this is a palm tree, so it's swaying in the wind, and actually the way the palm tree trunk grows, it's curved. And they're all kind of curved in different directions. This one's taller and it's kind of curving slightly the other way. And but the same concept. It starts out thick, so using the full width of the brush, and then as you stroke up, you twist the brush to get your line to become thinner. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the left. I have two palm trees on the left here. So this one's going to be pretty tall. And that one is going to sway kind of towards the van. And it's also going to be tall. Okay, so I'm going over my strokes or my trunks again, just to add another coat on the trunk itself. But to get kind of the texture thing going on the trunk, I'm going to wipe my brush off, wipe the excess umber off, and I'm going to dip it in just the unbleached titanium. I'm going to use the brush, the tip of the brush, but it's kind of turned on its side to it so I can make this kind of a horizontal curved stroke using the brush on its side and dragging it horizontally to kind of form some texture on the tree. So it's kind of blending in with that brown, and but it's giving some more color to the trunk rather than it being just a solid brown looking trunk. So I'm going to do that all along the trunk. So starting at the bottom and working my way to the top of the trunk. So the next color you're going to need is deep green permanent, and we're going to do this for the palm tree branches. So I'm going to start with the middle line of the palm tree, and I'm going to use the tip of my brush and I'm going to stroke down. So I want to make a very thin line using that flat brush, as thin as possible by using just the tip of that brush. So you kind of want to have a light hand here. You don't want to press hard, because if you press hard, you'll get a thick line. So you want to kind of hold it light, like light as a feather, or like if you were holding a pencil and just you're holding the brush so lightly that someone could take that pencil out of your hand. You're not gripping it hard enough. So you want to hold the paintbrush very light. And so I'm making these go in sort of a star formation where there's 5 lines, and so there's 2 at the bottom and there's 1 right at the top, and then there's 2 that are going diagonally at the top. So almost kind of like if it was a star. So the actual palm leaves, I'm going to double load my brush in the green and the primary yellow, and I'm going to drag. And so I'm using the tip of my brush, the full width, and I'm starting at the middle part of the line, and I'm kind of picking a side that I want to go. This one I'm going to go to the left, and I'm dragging the brush, and I'm dragging this each stroke down, and it creates kind of a fast way to do the palm leaves. I could have used a very tiny round brush and painted each little individual palm leaf, but this kind of gives it kind of an interesting different effect, but it's a lot faster than painting each one individually. You're just using the brush and you're dragging it down, so you're painting a whole bunch of palm leaves at the same time. Okay, so this one, so starting in the middle of the line and dragging down and letting that yellow and green kind of blend together and creating different color variations because they're blending together differently on the canvas. So dragging down, so starting in the middle leaf and picking a direction. So these ones are going to go on this side and just kind of dragging down. You can also imagine if the wind was blowing, what direction would the leaves kind of be going. I didn't think about it too hard when I was doing this painting because I definitely had some going some way and some leaves are blowing the opposite way. So in reality, in this painting, the wind's going in all directions. But it's still fun. I don't want to think too hard here. Okay, so doing the other palm trees. So just dragging the strokes by using the full width of the brush on one side of the line that you painted. And I guess you can do it on two sides. I did it on two sides on one of the palm tree leaves on the right. So you can, I think it looks best if you just do it on one side. Or if you do maybe a few of them where you have them on two sides. Okay, and so the amount of yellow and green you can see it kind of varies. So I'm not really thinking about I'm going to dip it in yellow because I want more yellow here. I'm just kind of grabbing the yellow, grabbing the green, not really thinking about the amounts that I'm grabbing. Okay, so back to my van. I'm going to go ahead and assuming those white flowers are dry, I'm going to fill those in with the Cad Orange Hue and the 10-0 liner. So that's what I'm doing there, just filling it in with the orange. And this is going to speed up just a bit. I'm going to go silent here while I do that. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with more details, and I'm going to do a little black dot right there on the tire. And I'm going to do a little bit of outlining where the bumpers are, and that's going to be a segue to the outlining of the windows. So we have there, I'm going to use a Sharpie for this, and I'm going to outline just the inside of the windows. So it's okay to use the Sharpie or a black paint pen. If you have a black acrylic paint pen, that would be perfect. And gives you a lot more control on these tiny areas that we're just basically outlining. So just the frame on the inside, it gets that area to pop a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to just go ahead and redo the outlining of the front and back bumpers. Right? So the rest of this painting is really just more details. Okay, so you can stop here if you like the simplicity of the way it looks now, but I could not stop when I did this painting. I wanted to keep going, and I felt inspired or inclined to do this shadow thing um, underneath the tires. So this reminded me of my truck painting that I did with the pumpkin in the truck where it had the same kind of shadow. So what I'm doing with the flat brush is I watered down some of the Mars Black, and I am doing these very light, I'm holding my brush very lightly, and I'm doing these horizontal strokes. The paint is translucent because it's watered down a bit, so it should be pretty see-through. And I'm doing the kind of shadow thing under the tires, under the palm tree branches, and under the body of the vehicle. So using the full width of the brush, kind of these back and forth strokes to get that shadow. Okay, so did a few diagonal strokes in there, but there's my shadows underneath the trunks and the vehicle. And I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to do another detail. So I'm back to my 10-0 round, and I'm going to just add on to these flowers. I'm going to do this white center with the flowers. So that's what I'm doing with the 10-0 round and white, and I'm just doing this kind of starburst thing in the center. I thought about doing these kind of detailed hibiscuses, but that would have been a little too tedious. So I'm just doing the like a white starburst thing in the middle of those orange flowers. And then I also did this vine thing next to the flowers. So I dipped it in that yellow green combo, still the 10-0 liner, and I'm just going to kind of do these swirly lines out from the flowers. Okay. For the sun, I am using my sponge pouncer for this. So I'm kind of taking a guess about where it would look best, and I'm going to put it in the upper right corner of my painting. This is, I applied titanium white and primary yellow to the sponge, and I'm going to stamp it and twist it. So over here up in the upper right corner, stamping and twisting, so that creates that circle. You could most certainly do this with a paintbrush. You just paint a round circle. For some reason, I wanted to use my pouncer because I didn't do that great a job on the tires and make that a perfect circle, so I grabbed my sponge for the sun. Wasn't filling the circles when I painted this. Okay, so then I did one final detail. Of course, you're never done with details. I don't feel like I'm ever done with details. I get very detailed in my paintings, and it's hard for me to stop. So I'm adding a little bit of orange to the surfboard at the top. And a little highlight line here in the back. And then, so I wasn't entirely happy with how this part turned out, but I'll leave that decision up to you, whether you like it. I think it was a little too busy at this point. So this is the door. That part is on the traceable. If you want to do that, if you like that, do it. If you don't, leave it out. And then this part I kind of liked, kind of neutral about it. But if you're doing this with kids, for some reason, it's motion lines, so it makes it look like the van is moving, and kids love doing these motion lines because it's like, oh, it reminds me of a comic book. It's moving again. It makes it look like it has action. So with the brush, it's kind of a dry stroke, so kind of dry your brush up a little bit, or don't add too much paint to your brush. But with the titanium white, just lightly add some lines. And I did it with the tires too. I painted some motion lines on the right side of the tires. So now I am all finished with my details of this painting. My tutorial has come to its conclusion. Thank you for watching, and thank you for painting with me how to paint a beach van. Thanks for watching.